Today we're going to tell you the story about Tojiro knives and why they're so awesome. I started cooking school with a Victorinox knife. It was a great knife. I wish I'd started with a Tojiro.
He probably would have not worked for Knifewear if he started with Tojiro knives.
Possibly. I would have hit higher heights, that's true. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Tojiro. Tojiro is one of the biggest knife manufacturers in Japan in terms of so-called ikkan seisan, who produces knife from A to Z in one place. That means they produce kitchen knives from start to finish in-house, except making the steels. Today we're gonna pull back the curtain and show you how awesome they are.
Flashback to April 2022. Naoto and I went to Japan. We had a great trip. We had a nice visit with Tojiro, and we got to walk around their facility and see how they go about doing what they do. And it was really quite impressive. One of the things that's really cool about Tojiro is not only do they have this large factory section, in fact, they have 2 whole buildings where they're producing the knives, start to finish, everything's done in-house. They also have a section where they're forging knives by hand.
So Tojiro's been known for their so-called machine-made or factory-made knives in Japan, but they revamped the image and hired this very talented blacksmith, Matsumura-san, and now he is in charge of forging blades coming out from the Tojiro.
はい、東次郎の松村と申します。はい、ここは鍛造東次郎のアトリエ製のナイフ、包丁を鍛造しているところですね。はい、我々は会社の中にカジュアルの部門と量産品の部門が両立して並立して、仕事をしているので、それの両方の良さを組み合わせると意外とよそが作ってない、よその鍛冶屋さんができないようなことがすっとできるんじゃないかと思わせて、よりいい等身の刃物を多くのお客さんに届けやすいようにしてみたいというような狙いです。そうですね、特段やっぱりノウハウがやっぱりありますので、うちのノウハウを使えばそんなに大きな苦労っていうのはなくて、等身のね厚みとか少し変わってくるんで、そこら辺はちょっとその溶接部門と相談をして、どういうふうにしたらつけやすいだろうかっていうのは相談をしてやったんで、特段そんなに困難っていうのはなかったと思います。はい。
And we're talking about like hand forging. It's very cool. It's a very cool place where they're working out of. They got a distinct little separate spot where they're doing all the hand forging. It's in the same factory, but it's kind of their own little area, right?
Yeah, and the team is actually starting to expand a little bit as well. Not only Matsumura-san, the solo blacksmith, they're hiring people like Sayaka-san, who really wants to make knife by herself, or some younger generations who they've been hiring to train under Tomo-san to forge and sharpen and make blades by themselves.
I think that's a really unique thing about Tojiro knives, where they are not just sticking to their lane. They're not just only making factory-made knives, right? They're also trying to integrate the hand-making skills. And I think that will go a long way to improving their quality, which is already amazing. The factory side will help to inform the handmade side on how to be more effective and more efficient in how they produce stuff too. It's really cool. It's not something you see very often in Japan, and I think it's really exciting. It's funny, I think sometimes factory-made knives get a bit of a bad rap because they're not this vision of some guy with a hammer in a dark room. And you know, one thing that always surprises me whenever you go to a knife factory is how many people are working there. It's really still driven by the people who are making these knives. They're experts in their own little areas and working on their own sort of section step by step.
Certainly you see those machines all around the factory, but there's always at least one person in charge of doing the specific step at a time, right?
If we make the process more efficient, we can produce things more consistently, and we can produce them more at a lower cost, right? And so that gives us knives that are really exceptionally good quality, and they strive to make very good quality knives, and then to do it at a price point that's really quite good, right? Well, and one of the things we often hear from people that's a bit of a myth is, oh, Japanese knives are so expensive. Well, Some of them sure are, but you know what? These guys are making a knife that's an incredibly good quality that is really not that expensive.
So when you walk into the factory, what you see is this beautiful frame of the punched out knives.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a very cool, it's pretty artistic, I'll be honest. It almost looks like you're walking into a museum.
Yeah.
And then as you're walking through the museum, it is also a living, breathing, acting factory. And just like in a museum, as you come across different spots, there's plaques where you can read about it. There's a long history. There's that one hallway you walk down that's got every one of the versions of knives they've ever produced. And it's a really cool sort of timeline of their production and how things have changed and improved.
Yeah, they display from the farming tools that they've started at into the making kitchen knives and such. So it was pretty cool to start.
Okay, Tojiro starts with steel. They buy the steel. They're not making their steel. They buy the steel, and then what happens?
They buy steel, it's already been thinned.
Okay.
So what they do is they cut out the shapes from the steel, whether they use those big punch machines, or they actually sometimes use these big laser.
And what's the sound for the laser? And the other one is okay,
Yeah.
got it. Once they cut out the blade, then where do they go?
They go to the heat treatment.
Heat treatment. Okay, this is a very important step in knife making, right?
Absolutely. So they have this machine to heat treat. So each one of them put the knives on these hooks, and they go into the heat treatment chamber, and comes out. Then heat treatment's done.
It's a really effective way of doing it, and I think you can see in North America a lot of people are doing that, where they have basically what looks like a fridge or a cabinet where they'll put the knives in there, and it will heat them up and cool them down, and heat them up and hold them and cool, right? And so in Tojiro they're running them through that machine. Is that the process that's happening there?
Yeah, basically, right?
Yeah.
Like they have the specific temperature control, so the steel heats up in the gradual manner and to the point they want to reach. Then they come out from the kiln like that.
It's really difficult to get footage of that stuff. That's often the part where they're like, no, you can't video this part. This is very important.
That's the footage you're looking for.
Exactly, right?
The heat treatment chamber, they actually have the Rockwell testing machine there. So occasionally they grab the knife and they do test the Rockwell hardness on the knives that they treat them.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Rockwell hardness is a measurement that a lot of people in purchasing knives and wanting to know knives really lean on, and that's a hardness, and hardness for us usually translates into sharpness and ability to hold that edge. And you see a lot of these handmade knives. Very few of those people actually test their knives. They they have to package up knives. They have to send it away to someone who's got the machine and do the test. So often that's a bit of an approximation. So one of the things you see in these factories is they're able to do that quality control testing in-house every day, and therefore their product they're producing is very consistent. Of course, they're using that to adapt and change the settings on their machines, right? So we've done the heat treatment, and then we've got to grind it, right? And so I remember seeing these big machines where they're putting the knives in, and it's like they close the door and this machine runs water and just grinding happens, and out comes this beautifully shaped and polished knife.
Yeah, it's basically it's a big machine with the water stone, spinning water stone inside, with water shooting out so that the steel does not get tempered. Like, you don't want to heat up the steel by the friction.
The friction can overheat and screw up that first process of heat treatment.
Exactly, right?
Gotcha.
So they set the blade in a way, then close the door, and the blade goes in, grinds them, and come back. It's not one step though. They actually have several different machines do different steps on that one. And each machines, there is a person who makes sure each blade comes out from the machine is the good quality.
It's being done properly.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because there is always tiny bit of variance in terms of straightness. So they do adjust them as they come in, and each one of them are taken care of properly.
So they're grinding the knives in these machines. They go through several steps. We've got people along the way who are putting them in, taking them out, and checking them every step of the way. After the knife has been ground, they are going to put the handle on. So they take the tang, they weld the tang to a bolster, which is this hard big piece here, and then they weld that to the actual blade. Now you got a knife with a handle. Well, not totally. They still need to put on what we call the scales, or that black part that you're actually going to hang on to, and then that gets riveted on. Now, I remember watching people do that, where they're putting them together by hand. They have like a little hand punch to press the rivets together, right? And then they're grinding them down. A lot of the steps that happen from here on out are very, very much hand done.
There's a little bit of variations on how thick this part is, weld, how much welds on here, and everything. It's it really needs the human eye to be able to grind this evenly.
Yeah, there just aren't machines that can produce the kind of quality of work that they're looking for. So they use humans, right?
So after putting the handles on, it's not the end. They do go through the multiple polishing steps.
They do, yeah.
To make sure there is no like bump on the side, and there's no much gap here, and edge is actually done by hand. They use big water stone to actually sharpen the last edge by hand, right? So but we interviewed one guy who was actually polishing the part that's like really hard to do it by machine, or big machine, like automated machines, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, again and again, there's like tiny bit of variations that does not automate, because the slight difference in the thickness, how much there is a bump and everything, that the machine, that the automated machine can't tell. So they go through different wheels, buffing wheels, different belts to make sure the fit and finish is.
Yeah, there's just sections that need the judgment of a person to do it properly.
古川と申します。ここの工程はまず刀身とハンドルを溶接してるんですね。でその溶接の部分をきれいに仕上げて包丁の形を作ってるという工程になります。自動化できるところはロボットでやってもらってるんですけども、形がやはりロボットだと複雑で手じゃないとできないっていう作業が結構何工程もあるわけなんですね。それで手でやってるような形でなってます。
今このお仕事されて何年目ぐらいですか
？17年ぐらいですかね。そうですね。ちゃんとできるところまで行くにはやっぱり2、3年ぐらいはかかりますね。はい。
You know what I really like about the, I guess, future of the Tojiro is that we briefly mentioned that there is a resident blacksmith, I guess, team now, combining that know-how to the more mass-produced, I guess, what they're really good at.
Yeah.
They're combining those two into the knife like this.
They're not really trying to stay in their lane. They're trying to make amazingly good products, and they're trying to do it all in-house.
Yeah. And they are in the same building, right? So if there's any problems with the, hey, those two doesn't go together, they can go and talk to them like really directly.
Well, I think as a small maker, you likely have certain freedoms, but you also probably have a lot of limitations when it comes to machines or just general infrastructure. Even someone to answer the phone, take your orders, right? Put stuff in boxes, right? When you've got a factory next door or under the same roof, frankly, I think you'd be able to combine those two things and really make something great. Yeah, that's very cool.
And we did an interview one of the apprentices or the workers. She's been there for quite a while, right? Like good friend of ours.
Yeah.
But the she actually created this one knife from start to finish. She was really excited, and we actually get to interview her, and she was talking about the knife.
Tojiro の幸田さやかです。お願いします。ナイフアトリエの包丁製作に携わってます。で主に今はハンドル作ったり、刀身磨いたり、あと削切りをやってます。私そのナイフの日に、一から全部、デザインから、レザーのシース作るまで 全部一人でやったんですけど、それが、ずっと練習とかしてきたんですけど、きちんと一丁形になったっていうのが本当初めてだったので、まずは一つクリアできたかなっていうところで、やっとスタートに立てたかなっていう今状態なので、一気にはいろいろできないので、ちょっとずつ地道に1個ずつ作っていきたいなっていうのと、あとはもうずっと言ってるんですけど、誕生したナイフを一応自分で作れるようになりたいっていう夢はずっと変わってないので、それもずっと続けてやっていきたいなって思ってます。
We felt that she had such an accomplishment from the project that she did. So hopefully that will motivate those younger apprentices and workers and blacksmiths in the workshop and create something really cool. You know what, the Tomo Matsumura-san?
Yeah.
He's such a talented blacksmith, right?
Yeah, he sure is.
He apprenticed or worked at the Yoshikane,
Nice.
which is
Yeah.
now, like, come to think of it, a Yoshikane is like this blacksmith school.
Well, it's a bit of an institution. It's a business, right? Where they're making knives for sale. It's not a school technically.
No,
but yeah.
so many blacksmiths that we deal with used to work for Yoshikane, learned so much about knife making. So the president of Tojiro, the Fujita-san, had this fantastic idea to bring a actual blacksmith into the workshop, and they built this place called Tojiro Atelier, which is specialized in hand-forged blade. Matsumura-san is head blacksmith of that particular workshop. He forged the blade, then pass it down to those workers to finish like sharpening and polishing and everything. He oversees every step for the forged blades.
What I think that Tomo is working on it, and Tojiro is supporting him in doing is pushing the edge of what they make, coming up with different designs, trying out different materials that might work for them, and while he's doing it, they're producing really beautiful handmade knives. It's a really cool thing that they're taking these ancient skills and traditions and incorporating it into the modern use of science and metallurgy, and using the modern technology and machines they've got. So look, Tojiro knives are incredibly well made. They're a cool company. They do things really well and slightly in their own way, right? But what you get is a really wicked knife that's, $100, maybe a bit more, right? Definitely way under 200. It's just a great knife, right? It's a tool. It does a great job. Yeah. We look forward to doing more blacksmith profiles and knife maker profiles, including all the great factories we work with. So if you want to see more, please hit us up in the comments. Let us know who you'd like to know more about next.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Don't use it.